Up first, introducing with the key words that we have, the welcoming that we have for this morning, Maribel Martínez, Director of the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. Take it away, Maribel.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, good morning, buenos dias, Narierescu. First, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, welcoming you all here from Santa Clara County, land of the Muwekma Ohlone people. And I want to center ourselves in this conversation as we remember our ancestors who have trailblazed so many movements and have advocated for our rights, for the right for us to even have this conversation that in years before, was not possible. And really, when we talk about the history and the inclusion of trans, non-binary, gender expansive folks, for a large part of our history, they've been made invisible. They were absolutely here, but our history books, our textbooks, our documentation of their experiences have been missing from those narratives. And the conversations like this begin to correct that huge historical error in the retelling of who we are as a community. But also the way that we talk about community now, particularly as we face and continue to face this global pandemic, is also asking us to question the words that we use, the intentionality of how we continue to unravel the thread of our storytelling. And oftentimes, transgender, non-binary, gender expansive folks, LGBTQ folks in general, and folks of color are often given a label of vulnerable. And it places that undue burden on individuals and communities. And so for today, and I hope that in the continuation of the conversation, we center not on the vulnerability of communities, but that we begin to intentionally look at what have been the structural conditions such as racism, transphobia, heteronormativity, that have normalized discriminatory practices, that have normalized the absence or the erasure, the invisibilizing of communities such as trans, non-binary, gender expansive, LGBT folks of color. And really begin to address what has happened to create that marginalization. Why have there been a restriction of opportunities and an undue place of disadvantages? When we look at these, when we ask those types of questions, we begin to get at the root of that marginalization that has taken away and many times limited people's agency, people's access to resources, and their ability to enjoy economic prosperity, and has left folks to continue to struggle in cycles of survival. And we all know that a stable economic environment is one of those key social determinants of health. And so I think that's the conversation that we need to have today. How do we fix the errors of our pasts as a community, and in particular as local governments, as community workers, as CBOs, and begin to rebuild a future that takes everyone into consideration and is intentional about those who have historically not been able to benefit from the supports of our communities. When we think about the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, some of you might be very familiar with the work that we do, and for some of you, this might be the first event that you're engaging with our office. Our office started in 2016, was the creation by our then supervisor, Ken Yeager, who asked for the data, asked for us to begin to count because we matter, and look at the health disparities here in Santa Clara County. I think oftentimes we think of California or the Bay Area as being a place that has alleviated all of the disproportionate negative health outcomes for all communities, but we know that that's not true, that we still have lots of work to do. And so our office began that work in 2016. And at that point, it was the very first office in the United States at the county level to focus on LGBTQ affairs. Since then, we've had two other LGBTQ summits. Our first one was setting the vision for what the work that we are doing, why it's important for local governments to be active participants in equity and social justice work. Last year, some of you joined us to talk about Support Out, our transformational initiative working to support LGBTQ youth of color, particularly those who are in justice involved or systems involved youth, those who are in foster care and juvenile justice. But beyond that, to ensure that there are pathways for folks to be in community, in families, in schools, and out of child welfare and out of juvenile justice. And that work continues to this day. And this year, again, we want to focus on economic empowerment to begin to vision a future where we can attain not just stability, but economic prosperity, an abundance of opportunities. And again, centering on the strengths that we have as CBOs, as institutions like local government, because we have been able to make significant change. Since we started in 2016 to now, we've been able to open an LGBTQ focused housing, transitional housing program, which is the New Haven Inn here in Santa Clara County. We've been able to open the Gender Health Center that's part of our VMC health system. We've been engaged in an investment of more than $500,000 for training, and we actually offer a training module available for free for all public agencies, CBOs, and schools through our office. And you'll hear more about that or you can read more about that on our website if you're interested in any of those training modules. We've also been in deep partnership with Behavioral Health Services and in their creation of the Q Corner, which establishes linkages and access to care. And what we're really here to do is to transform systems, knowing that our systems have been complicit in making certain communities invisible, in not distributing resources equitably across all who need it. And so now is the time to act. Now is the time to revise the way we do our work. Now is the time to ask key and critical questions about what we want in the future. How do we begin to create a community where everyone belongs and where everyone feels safe and everyone has the opportunity to lead a full, productive life, inclusive of people's identities, inclusive of people's backgrounds, inclusive of everything and everyone they represent. I think that's the hard work, and I'm so happy that you've joined us in this conversation, that we have amazing speakers that will be sharing their insights about what they're doing in their communities to lift the stories that need to be heard. And so fortunate that in Santa Clara County, we have an amazing team, not just those working in the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, but all of our colleagues in the Division of Equity and Social Justice, in the County Executive's Office, in behavioral health, in probation, in child welfare, in our healthcare medical system, that we're all beginning to work together toward the same goal of how do we make it better? How do we alleviate the errors of the past? And how do we begin to build a future that we all can be proud of? So thankful that you're here. So thankful that in the busyness of your workday, in the beginning of the week, you chose to spend it with us as we still continue to live through a global pandemic, that you've taken time to center the voices of trans, non-binary, gender expansive folks, and that you are beginning to envision with us, dream with us a better future. Thank you so much for joining this year's summit. And I look forward to hearing all of your feedback and engaging in this conversation further along.